The hidden pressure of upfront housing costs. At 9:07 in the morning, the money is still in your account. At 9:12, almost all of it is gone. One transfer has removed 12 months of rent in less than 30 seconds. The balance that took nearly a year to build disappears in one day. The landlord is paid. The apartment is secured. The receipt is saved on your phone. Technically, you exchanged money for a place to live, but emotionally it does not feel like a normal expense. It feels like a financial collapse that happens on schedule, and almost immediately, the next countdown begins. This is Africa Money Mind, not financial advice, but a map of the systems and psychology behind money. Through Nigerian experiences, real-world data, and financial psychology, we examine the hidden forces that shape spending, income, social pressure, and financial identity. In Nigeria, rent is not always a monthly bill. For many tenants, it becomes a year-long financial emergency with a predictable date. The pressure begins with a timing mismatch. Most workers receive income gradually, one salary at a time, but a landlord may demand an entire year of housing money at once. That transforms rent from an ordinary living cost into a test of liquidity. Liquidity means having money available at the exact moment it is required. A person may earn enough over 12 months to cover an apartment and still struggle to produce the full amount on one particular day. Consider Tunde, a fictional 31-year-old professional. He earns 400,000 naira per month, or 4.8 million naira per year before deductions. He finds an apartment with annual rent of 1.8 million naira. On paper, the rent is 37.5% of his yearly salary. But Tunde does not receive 4.8 million naira at the beginning of the year. He receives 400,000 at a time, while the apartment demands 1.8 million in one payment. The landlord thinks in years. Tunde earns in months. The first result is cash flow compression. 12 months of future housing costs are squeezed into one present transaction. If Tunde paid 150,000 naira every month, rent would become part of a regular budget. Transferring 1.8 million in one day feels like one enormous loss. For months before the deadline, ordinary purchases begin competing with the future rent. A phone repair, medical bill or family emergency is judged by how far it moves Tunde away from the target. A 50,000 naira expense no longer feels like 50,000 naira. It feels like a missing piece of the apartment. This creates a rent shadow, the period in which the next housing payment influences almost every financial decision, even before it happens. The second pressure is that savings become reserved money. Imagine Tunde has 1.5 million naira in his account 6 months before rent is due. To another person, he appears to have meaningful savings. But Tunde does not experience the money as available. The rent already owns it. The banking app displays 1.5 million naira. His mind displays 0. The money could solve an emergency today, but spending it would create another emergency later, replacing it before the landlord's deadline. Ordinary savings represent protection and choice. A rent reserve has one destination and one date. Then comes the annual financial reset. Before rent is paid, the account grows, but the tenant feels increasingly restricted. After payment, there is relief because housing is secure, but the person becomes exposed everywhere else. You secure the roof and lose the cushion. Relief says, I have somewhere to live for another year. Fear says, what happens if something else goes wrong now? The payment also transfers risk. The tenant gives the landlord an entire year of money immediately, while receiving the housing service month by month. The landlord receives certainty today. The tenant receives occupancy gradually. If the tenant loses a job 3 months later, faces delayed salary or experiences an emergency, the landlord has already been paid. Upfront rent does not remove housing risk. It moves more of the timing risk onto the tenant. Scarcity makes the arrangement harder to negotiate. When suitable housing is limited, a tenant asking to pay monthly or quarterly may fear that another person is ready to pay the full amount immediately. After weeks of agent calls, cancelled inspections and unsuitable rooms, the tenant may stop calmly comparing options and begin trying simply to end the search. 12 months of housing can then be evaluated in one afternoon under the pressure of losing the apartment. and annual rent is often only the largest visible number. Moving may also require agent fees, transport, cleaning, repairs, electricity setup, security arrangements, curtains, and basic furniture. The rent gets you the key. The key does not automatically give you a working home. A tenant can raise the rent and still lack enough money to make the space comfortable. From outside, the move looks like progress. Inside, the person may be surrounded by boxes while calculating the cost of water, locks, paint, and transport to work. Annual rent can also change the relationship between a worker and a job. Someone may dislike the workplace or know that the company is unstable, but the rent deadline turns future salaries into pieces of housing security. Leaving the job is no longer only a career decision. It becomes a housing decision. This is even harder for people with irregular earnings. Two people may earn the same amount in 1 year, but the person whose income arrives regularly may find it easier to prepare for rent. Annual rent rewards not only income, but income timing. Finally, there is hidden poverty after a successful payment. Publicly, the tenant has secured an apartment for another year. Privately, the same person may have an empty savings account, borrowed money, postponed healthcare, or months of restricted spending ahead. The rent receipt shows the amount paid. It does not show the financial condition left behind. There are many versions of affordable. Rent can be paid while preserving stability. It can be paid by emptying every reserve, borrowing from future income, or delaying other important needs. All of these situations produce the same receipt. Only the tenant knows the difference. The annual payment system survives because everyone wants certainty. Landlords fear delayed payments. Tenants fear losing accommodation. Agents fear losing the transaction. But when certainty is created by demanding 12 months of money from someone who earns 1 month at a time, the system produces predictable pressure. The problem is not always that the tenant earns too little. Sometimes the money arrives in the wrong form for the system. 1 year's rent is not simply a large housing cost. It is 12 future payments dragged into the present. It is the landlord's certainty purchased with the tenant's flexibility. It is savings that look personal but already have an address. And when the transfer is completed, the tenant does not feel finished. The next countdown starts. The most expensive part of annual rent may not be the amount itself. It may be the way one payment controls a person's thinking for 12 months. So when a Nigerian tenant says rent is coming, they may not be describing an ordinary bill. They may be describing the day when months of discipline, missed purchases, extra work, and private anxiety disappear in one transfer. The apartment will remain. The money will not. And the question remains, when 12 months of shelter must be purchased in 1 day, is the tenant paying only for a home, or also paying for the right to stop feeling afraid of losing it? Africa Money Mind does not provide personal financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. This content is created for education and discussion, with a focus on financial psychology, human behavior, and the economic systems behind money. No quick rich promises, just understanding how money really works.